If you are new to the channel, this donation goal has been going on since I was at 158 subscribers. Every subscriber up to 1,000 will be $1 I donate towards the Roots Young Adult Shelter, a place I volunteered at for 2 years, and there is no time limit. After not winning the Heisman last season, I felt disrespected. Preseason All-SEC picks came out, and I was the second halfback behind Jake Frederick, a sophomore running back from Georgia, and Judkins from Ole Miss. Well, you already know what's going on. What if I told you that we lost the first 3 games of the season and we had a shot to make the college football playoffs? Let's find out. Our first game came against Michigan State, and fall was in the air, and a new era of Alabama football was getting ready to begin with Jalen Milroe and me leading the team as seniors this year. I had put on more weight, and I had gotten even stronger and even faster than my junior year when I was going for the Heisman. And I don't care what anyone says, you have to be going for the Heisman to win the Heisman, if that makes sense. You don't just stumble into winning the Heisman. It takes a specific effort to reach that level of individual success, and sometimes it does come at the cost of team success. It was 7-7, and I was already on a roll when I called for a ball in the flats, and I got laid out, and I ended up fumbling the ball, and Michigan State recovered, and that was our second turnover of the game already. On our next drive, Milroe found Kendrick Law for a touchdown from 20 yards out. Fast forwarding to the end of the third quarter, our offense was getting clamped by the Spartans. We were down a score when Milroe dropped a 50-yard bomb on the Michigan State secondary to tie the game. With 1 minute remaining, we had a chance to win the game, but on 3rd and 1, I couldn't convert. Michigan State scored, and we had only 10 seconds left to tie the game to go into overtime. I got tackled going out of bounds, and then I got pulled out for the last play of the game. And unfortunately, the ball got tipped in the air by a Michigan State defender on a last-second Hail Mary by us. It actually fell into a receiver's hands, but he couldn't hold on to it, and we ended up losing to Michigan State. And our next game was against Clemson. Some of you might be familiar with my body of work as a running back, but I can guarantee you haven't seen anything like what I'm going to be doing this year. What was my one weakness out of high school as a running back? I wasn't quick or agile. I've been doing drills nonstop to work on that agility, and it's paying dividends in my senior season. I'm shiftier than ever before, moving like Barry Sanders in a 6'4" body. After that touchdown, we had a 14-7 lead over Clemson that vanished by the fourth quarter. We were down by 4, and on 2nd and 4, I put the team on my back, shoving defenders out of the way as I got us down to the 30. I got pulled off the field, and we scored another touchdown to take a 3-point lead, but with 2 minutes left, we had the game in our hands, but Milroe got strip-sacked in the pocket, and Clemson returned it for a TD. We were in the same situation as last game, blowing a lead late and having to scramble last second to win the game. Milroe came up clutch though after that turnover, finding Kobe Prentice for a 40 yards, making it look easy. I could only watch from the sidelines as I got pulled off the field for Jamarian Miller on 3rd down. Jalen Milroe scrambled for 3 yards, and instead of using our timeout, the offense sprinted to the line and snapped the ball immediately. Nobody got open, and Clemson was ready for Milroe to run outside the pocket again, and he got sacked immediately, and that was the game. It was a heartbreaker to lose that game against the number 3 team in the nation the way that we did when we had the win in our hands. Morale was low around the team after the game, but it was my job to bring the energy, and that's exactly what I did to start our game against Arizona. I was breaking off of tackles, bouncing off of guys, and trying to assert my dominance over the Arizona defense. But I felt like I was the only one with my head in the game. Milroe threw a pick in the flats that almost turned into 6 for Arizona, but I hustled my over and brought the DB down like DK Metcalf chasing Buda Baker. Fortunately for us, they didn't score on their possession, so we still had a chance to win. I got pulled off the field to get us to 14 points, but we got the ball back with a minute left and down by 3, and Jalen Milroe came up clutch, delivering a perfect ball to Kendrick Law, who almost took it all the way but got brought down near the 20-yard line. We were already in field goal range and had a chance to go to overtime, but Jalen Milroe threw a ball on 2nd and 6 into double coverage that got intercepted and effectively ended our chances of winning this game. And we walked out with our 3rd consecutive loss. And to make matters even worse, my mom told me that my dad had been having some troubling health problems for a few weeks. I broke down because I felt like before the season this was going to be my best year, and I was excited for everything that it had in store, but it had gone to shit. So you might be wondering, how could this team still have a chance to make the college football playoffs? Well, buckle up. Shortly after finding out my dad was sick, he called me and told me that the cancer had returned. He said he was still feeling good and he was fighting like me every day on the field. He told me that he wanted to come to Alabama from Virginia and hang out with me and help me train during the season, and that made me feel a lot better because otherwise I wasn't going to be able to get my mind off of his health when I couldn't see him. Once he came to Tuscaloosa, we ran our own side practices, and he told me that he didn't care about me getting a degree. He knew that I was smart. He just wanted me to make the league, and he wanted me to win the Heisman too. I asked him how he was doing, and he said that he was getting treatment down here in Tuscaloosa and that he would be just fine. But he wasn't just fine. I noticed that he was looking a lot thinner, and doing simple things made him really tired. This man used to do drills with me only a few years ago, and now he had a tough time walking up the stairs. Getting back to the game, I was having a good game against Ole Miss, and it was taking 2 or 3 defenders to bring me down, but sometimes that can lead to injury. I got nearly killed and turned into a Beyblade on this play as I flipped around in the air, and somehow I came out uninjured, and I got really lucky. Later in the drive, I got us into the end zone for our 3rd touchdown of the game to give us a 4-point lead, and with 3 minutes left, we were running the clock out, but I stupidly went out of bounds, and luckily Luckily, that didn't hurt us too much as we ended up picking up a first down and I almost got into the end zone. We walked out with our second dub of the season, and Ole Miss fans were shocked, but I'm not really sure why because they were 0-3. After our game against Ole Miss, I got a call from my mom, and my dad had been admitted to the hospital. I was freaking out. I dropped everything to go see how he was doing. I showed up and he was there with my mom, talking and laughing like he was just fine. I told him that I was worried about him, and he said I had more important stuff to do right now than worry about him and that he was going to be just fine. He ended up getting released from the hospital later that day and was sent home with some medication. We were in the midst of the season and Heisman rankings were just starting to come out. I felt like I had a pretty great resume with over 100 yards per game, averaging nearly 2 touchdowns and 5.5 yards per carry, but my receiving had dropped off a little bit and I wasn't really getting used as a receiving threat. I was mostly used as a pass blocker on passing downs because I was a really solid blocker, but I didn't feel like it was using all of my skills. Anyways, point being, I was on the list of the top 5 for the Heisman, and I guess that made sense. The team hadn't had a lot of success in the first half of the season, but everything changed after our win over Texas A&M. They were ranked number 6 in the nation, and beating them moved us up to number 21 in the nation with a 3-3 record behind my superstar performance. We had some momentum after winning 3 straight, and it felt like we could win any game. If you look at those 3 losses to start the season, we led every game in the fourth quarter before losing. We should have been undefeated, but we just couldn't close out games at the time. But I think we had figured that out. For being 1-5 though, Arkansas was putting up a fight. Milroe found Isaiah Bond in the corner of the end zone to tie the game up, but we were silent on offense until the beginning of the fourth when I punched it into the end zone to break the drought and put us back within 3. With a minute remaining, we were going to put the game away, but Milroe got tackled for a loss, making us kick a field goal to tie the game instead. Our defense came up clutch though, forcing a turnover near midfield with 30 seconds left to give us a chance to win in regulation. And Milroe found me over the middle, and I put 3 or 4 defenders on skates to get us into realistic field goal range. With 6 seconds left, we wanted to kick the beat a little bit closer, and I got out of bounds with 2 seconds left. We made the field goal, coming back from down 10 in the fourth quarter, and I finished as the player of the game, this time putting up some great receiving stats after I complained about not getting the ball enough. After our close win versus Arkansas, we barely moved up in the rankings, but I started to get mentioned in the Heisman conversation again. My dad, despite getting more fatigued lately, was still helping me train in the afternoons. A draft scout approached my family and told us that I was looking at a late first-round projection at running back, and my dad was ecstatic. I hadn't seen him that energetic in weeks. I was really happy about the projection, but I felt like I could finish even higher with the way that the season was starting to play out. That being said, we're going to go ahead and forget that Wildcat pitch happened against Tennessee. Luckily, I had gained enough confidence from my coaching staff to be able to make some unique plays from time to time, but that one definitely shortened the leash a little bit and put us into a 14-point hole to begin the game. I made up for it midway through the second, getting us into the end zone to tie the game 14-14, but we were down by 3 still with a minute remaining in the first half when Jalen Milroe took matters into his own hands, scrambling for 40 yards down to Tennessee's side of the field. He followed that up at the end of the first half by scrambling again outside of the pocket, fighting through multiple defenders and getting into the end zone for another touchdown. Like I said, Jalen Milroe and I were the leaders of this team, and sometimes it's the Milroe show. I was having a pretty damn good game too, aside from that pitch 6 earlier, but I went down on a run midway through the third, injuring my shoulder, which was pretty rare for me at this point, and I didn't return until there was only 1 minute left in the fourth, and we were luckily still up by 3 points, but I was on a halfback screen on 4th and 5 because we decided to go for it, and I only had 1 man to beat, and I was able to pick up the first down, and we were able to run the clock out and beat Tennessee in Tennessee. After our win though, we still hadn't moved up the rankings at all with our next game against one of our biggest rivals in LSU. By this point, I had been in continuous contact with a few possible agents and finally set on a guy named Andy Hardwick, and he had assured me that I was getting drafted in the early first at this point with my level of production, comparing my senior year performance to that of Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, and Derrick Henry. I made the decision finally to commit to the draft. For those of you who don't know, I have always considered going to the Marines or to the Army for 4 years after finishing my time at Alabama, but with my dad's health and with how everything is going this season, I was okay with foregoing spending 4 years in the military despite the history of our family's military service. Getting back to the game, we were down by 3 with a minute remaining in the first half when Jalen Milroe found Kobe Prentice for an 80-yard bomb to get into the end zone and give us a lead before the end of the first half. Early in the third quarter, I ran a short out and got laid out by 2 defenders, getting my legs taken out from underneath me. Luckily, again, I remained uninjured. I don't know what to credit my durability to, but somehow I stayed on the field, and at the beginning of the fourth quarter, I ran us into the end zone after I ran over a couple of LSU defenders. Late in the fourth quarter, we had this game in the bag. I caught another first down, and with a minute remaining, I was basically just running the clock out, picking up another first down, and that would be the game. We'd walk out of LSU with a big W. The team is super excited, and our next game was against Mississippi State. Finally, after beating LSU, we started to get some recognition as a team, moving up from number 20 in the nation to number 17 with a 6-3 record. We were already up by 7 when I snatched the hearts out of the Mississippi State defenders, breaking off a tackle and then taking it for 30 yards before being knocked out of bounds. I was pulled off the field for our next touchdown, and we would roll to another victory, capped off by a final drive in which I broke a few more tackles before falling into the end zone. I'd moved up to being in serious conversations of breaking the top 5 for the Heisman candidates, and our next game would be the greatest chance I've ever had to prove myself as one of the greatest running backs to ever lace them up in college. I definitely hadn't forgotten Jake Frederick being put as the preseason all-SEC running back over me, and we had been beaten down by Georgia in the previous 2 SEC championship games, but after moving up to number 10 in the nation with a 7-3 record, we were at equal footing with Georgia, who shared the same record. Finally, I'd have one more chance to finally get revenge against the team that's ruined our season a few times. And Jalen wanted that too, delivering a beautiful ball over the top to Isaiah Bond, who scored before the half to give us a 27 lead. Georgia scored on their next drive, and Nick Saban felt pressure to go for it on Georgia's 30 on 4th and 16, and it ended up being picked off, so it was basically an arm punt. On our next drive, we got to the red zone, we were stopped for a field goal, and Georgia was creeping closer, getting another score to make it a 2-point game. With 2 minutes remaining, we just had to make Georgia waste their last few timeouts. They had 2 timeouts remaining, and we were running the football, trying to pick up first downs, and on 3rd and 2, Jalen Miller ran a play action and luckily found our tight end for a 2-yard gain to give us a first down, and we walked away with our first win in the last 3 years against Georgia. And when you look at that, we're playing against our number 1 rival, Auburn, and we have moved up from number 10 in the nation to number 5 with an 8-3 record. I never thought I would see the day that we would be the number 5 ranked team in the nation after losing our first 3 games of the season. But this team was fighting like crazy, and the last thing we have to do is stop Auburn from ruining this run. My dad was probably the most excited about the fact that we moved up to number 5, and despite the fact that we had stopped training together because he was getting too tired, he was rooting for us in person at this game. I was gonna leave it all on the line on this game for my dad, for my teammates, and for my coaches. And I said that as I was getting armbarred into the turf on a catch, but even a hit like that wasn't gonna stop me. I was seeing red. I just wanted to cap the season off so bad. My 4 years of college are culminating in the chance to go to the college football playoffs and potentially win the Heisman at the same time. We scored our 2nd touchdown while I was off the field, but the 3rd one I ran in for a 20-yard carry. And look at this, my ability to break off tackles, and it takes 6 or 7 defenders to finally bring me down with 3 minutes remaining in the 4th quarter. This game is over, but I'm not willing to end it just quite yet. With 1:40 left after we score a field goal, I break off a couple more tackles, taking it for almost another first down carry, but we're not done yet. We could just run the clock out. Auburn only has 1 timeout left, but I run the football again, breaking off some more tackles, picking up another first down, and I get some great blocks to get me into the red zone on this play, and I almost get into the end zone, getting down at the 10-yard line, and with 1 minute remaining, I run it out to the left. I only have 1 man to beat, and I get into the end zone for another score, and we walk out with a huge victory over Auburn. And I had 31 carries and 280 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And our next game is the SEC championship against Vanderbilt, and on the first play of the game on Wildcat, I take it all the way for a touchdown. The real question is, how could you not give me the Heisman at this point after the last 2 games to cap off this season? You might have noticed that after our win against Auburn, we did not move up in the top 5, and that's because 2 Pac-12 teams are in the top 5, which is really strange, but hopefully the 2 of them will have to play in the Pac-12 championship this week. As long as we get to the number 4 spot, we could be in the college football playoffs. Again, both of my parents are at this game to watch the game against Vandy. And kind of just like every other game this season, we took an early lead but found ourselves down a score in the 3rd quarter. And that quickly ballooned to being down by 2 scores in the 4th with only 4 minutes left in the game. I knew my impact would be limited if we didn't score quickly because we'd start to pass the ball every play, and I wanted to have full control over this game, so I made probably the best play of the season so far, and it wasn't for a touchdown, it wasn't for more than 40 yards, but getting past 2 Vandy defenders and getting out of bounds was huge to put us in position to score. And I showed everything that I could do on this drive. On the very next play, I caught it underneath and took it all the way for a touchdown with 2.5 minutes remaining. We got the ball back with 1:40 left, but Jalen Milroe took a sack, and it was 2nd and 15, and things were starting to look ugly. On 3rd and 15, though, Jalen Milroe finds our tight end for a first down pickup, getting us past the 50-yard line. I got another chance to run the football and only picked up a couple yards before being pulled off the field, and with 25 seconds left on 3rd and 7, I could hardly watch, but we got into the end zone for a touchdown to tie it, and that took us to overtime against Vandy, and I picked up some more yards, but luckily Vanderbilt actually missed their field goal, and we walked off with a huge comeback victory, being down 2 scores in the 4th quarter, and I had a massive game with 3 total touchdowns and 230 all-purpose yards, and we hoisted the SEC championship trophy for the first time in my 3 years at Alabama. The only thing that was a little disappointing was that I didn't even finish in the top 5 for the Heisman despite having nearly 2,000 rushing yards and 20-plus touchdowns. What was even more disappointing was the fact that we didn't move up past number 5 after our win versus Vandy. The two Pac-12 schools had already played each other earlier on in the season, and they were in the same division, so they didn't play each other in the Pac-12 championship game either. I think we definitely should have made the top 4 anyways, but we ended up playing against number 7 Texas. I felt like I let my dad down after not making the college football playoffs, but he told me that he was super excited to come to the Sugar Bowl anyways. Both of my parents were supposed to be at the game, but I didn't get a chance to see them before it started. I walked in for my first score of the game, and then I was already breaking ankles, picking up big yards, up to 80 rushing yards early in the first half, and then Jalen Milroe made an uncharacteristic mistake, not sliding, instead taking a big hit, and he ended up fumbling and Texas recovered. And they did end up scoring off of that turnover, and then on the following drive, Jalen Milroe kind of made up for it, making a 30-yard bomb to Kendrick Law, but we didn't end up scoring once we got down to their side of the field. Jalen Milroe, again, escaping outside of the pocket, didn't learn his lesson from the first fumble, didn't end up fumbling on that possession though, and then eventually scored a touchdown, passing it to Isaiah Bond right before the end of the first half. Since it was a bowl game, we had a little leniency with using our phones in the locker room, and at halftime I saw that my mom had texted me and she said that dad wasn't doing great, so they had to leave early, and that freaked me out a little bit. I texted her back and asked her what's wrong, and she said that dad wanted me to focus on playing the game and not to worry, he'd be watching, just not in person. I didn't really know what to think at this point, but she said we would talk after the game, and we were up by 3 points with 2 minutes left in the game, and it was 4th and 3, and luckily Texas did not score. With a minute and a half remaining, Texas had only 1 timeout left, and luckily I stayed in bounds, but we walked away with the victory, winning by 3 points over Texas, and I finished the season with 2,000 rushing yards. I checked my phone after the game, and I got the one thing I didn't want to see. My mom told me that I should meet her at the hospital after the game.